and she would maybe eat in the kitchen with you. Did that happen regularly? Did you have a lot of time with them, members of the royal family?
The princess spent a lot of time in the kitchen. In fact, reading The Sun, which wasn't allowed in the house.
You smuggled it in?
My maid.
Your maid, yeah. Well, that's quite a regular thing, Matt. I think it was part of Diana's character, because she had this sort of very friendly approach to all members of her staff, actually. And, the kitchen, like in everyone's house, really is a focal meeting point for life. And, Diana would often say to me, what are you doing? I say, well, come down, we're going to have a coffee with Mervyn or something. And there would be a right place to exchange effectively local gossip within the household. But so it was quite a good place to exchange.
It was who was doing what,
information.
Who was going where. Well, that's a lot of these houses survive on people talking to each other. Did you know the boss was doing so-and-so? Did you know they were there? No. And of course, these things make a lot of difference. And talking to the chauffeurs and people like that.
I just think they're interesting about other things. I suddenly came across my mind, Mervyn, was with the shooting parties at Sandringham. Mm-hmm. So, the chef there, the kitchen there, would prepare, the lunch for the royal shooting party that would often go in one of the shooting lodges on the estate. Yeah. What always made me laugh was that all this sort of wonderful food being prepared to be taken up in hampers to the shooting lodge. Then if you looked out of the kitchen window, you'd have the beaters and the gamekeepers on the backs of tractors. And Mervyn and others would knock up this massive great stew. Do you remember? This soup. Yeah. So you had, by comparison, you had this wonderful produce going out of the shooting lodge, and yet there were buckets of this stew, which actually, I must say, it was brilliant.
Exactly.
And
it was warm and tasty.
It was, with chunks of bread,
You guys are making me feel hungry now, actually. I feel like we should have bought some lunch or bought some croissants or something like this for this. Listen, we've been talking about Diana. Obviously, you mentioned there, but she used to come down and be with you in the kitchen at Kensington Palace, and you were the chef. Mm-hmm. We may have to touch on her eating disorder. I mean, were either of you aware of, you were the chef, were you aware of this eating disorder she had in the early 80s?
Well, you knew things weren't quite what they should be, but, it's not my place to ever criticise or...
Sure, no, absolutely.
And it was her life, and I'm afraid I couldn't criticise. But you're saying with the foods, what I always had in the kitchen was there was a small fridge, and I used to leave things in the fridge that she liked, and cold lamb cutlets in mint aspic and things like that. But so she could just snack whenever she wanted to. And of course, with the illness, there was bowls of custard, which were obligatory, I fear. But
did she ever mention that to leave food out, or it's something?
No, I always did that, because often when they went out for dinners, and she always maintained the fact, they go to dinners and they could never eat, because people don't want to see them eating. They want to actually talk all the time. And so they could go to these dinners, chop a few things up, and not eat anything. They come back absolutely starving. So I always left stuff in the fridge so that they could have something to snack on.
Yeah, in that question, man, I didn't join the household until the mid-80s, so Diana did talk about it, but yes, it was serious. It was an eating disorder. But by the time I arrived there, luckily that that illness had moved on. Mm. But I've always known Diana had an amazing appetite, and I think Mervyn would agree with that. Her favourite restaurant at that particular time was San Lorenzo's in Beecham Place, and great Italian cuisine there. Diana was always talking about the quality of food, and I think generally, it's fair to say, Merv, that she had a good liking and a good taste for good produce. She was very fortunate to have a kitchen that she did at Kensington Palace and other places.
Yeah, and an excellent chef. What was it, before we move on from the Waleses, what was it like cooking for William and Harry? Is it a case of the family would all sit, as I mentioned earlier about this big round table, and the whole family would sit together? Would William and Harry sit with their parents?
Children are in the nursery until they're about 10.
Right.
And with the nanny. And often they would go, the principals would go and dine in the nursery along with them, rather than have the children in the dining room.
And what would you cook for William and Harry?
Oh, well, they really had the basic. It was all the old cottage pies and, as I said, treacle tarts and all that sort of thing. Very, very nutritious and good, substantial food.
Did any of them show any inclination that they might want to help you out and cook in the kitchen?
No, they sometimes got drafted by the nanny to go downstairs and help the chef. So, oh yes, thank you. The nanny was trying to get rid of them. Obviously, they wanted to do something, so they sent them down. Let's make pastry. So
the boys.
Yes, yeah. But that didn't happen too often, thankfully.
Was it edible pastry?
I wouldn't have thought. I wouldn't go near it myself.
But Charles, before we move on, Charles must, as I say, he's a foodie, or he's really into his food, his organic produce.
Yes.
I mean, was that hammered into you as his chef that this is how he wanted his food to be cooked?
I mean, there was nothing ever said, but it was an absolute fact that we all knew that that's what he enjoyed. And it was, you just carry on from there.
Was there anything? Oh, sorry.
No. I think that where I witnessed, his particular interest in food, because at Highgrove there was a very sizable vegetable garden, a walled vegetable garden, and it was, immaculately and brilliantly maintained by, a fleet of gardeners, and this is something that the Prince, really loved, and we all know just his interest in gardening. I mean, one of the first things he ever did at Highgrove, before my time, admittedly, was the thyme path. He was a great user of fresh herbs. But the actual garden itself, he would go down with, the sort of the wooden basket and select certain vegetables for him and return back to the kitchen. So, that was clearly evidence of his, liking of good quality food, and something that even to this day that he has a special interest in. And, would very much discuss, I think, with you what was, current produce in the garden.
Yes, well, what's coming up, and he would always see, he would take great notice and interest. And as you said, he'd bring his trug back with all the little bits of carrots and whatever, and have
the word I was searching for.
Trug.
Trug, sorry. The royal trug.
What does that mean?
It's the wooden basket, the gardener's basket. And he'd always have the fresh vegetables, which he literally just picked, and he would have that with his dinner 10 minutes later. It's a bit of a worry where he rushes upstairs to change, comes back down, and it's all ready. But
if I've heard you right there, Charles would go out and pick his own vegetables.
Oh yes, just a few for dinner. That was it. If he was on his own.
And also another interesting point about food was that at that particular time, the Gloucestershire Police Constabulary had the responsibility for, the security of Highgrove. And the Prince was very keen on fresh eggs. Well, there were, I don't know how many chickens, but there were quite a few chickens at that time. And suddenly one of the officers of the constabulary appointed himself as the sort of chief chicken carer. And I remember this guy vividly, who would knowledge that the prince and the princess were arrived, he'd gather up the week's eggs. And I think they were Marron chickens, if I remember rightly, that gave that very dark brown egg. So, everybody within the estate was involved in some way of providing food for the Prince and Princess of Wales. I'd be quite interesting that whether that still exists, whether the Gloucester Constabulary still have a chicken care or not, remains to be seen. With budgets, I probably think not.
I need to look into that.